Welcome, travelers, to Terrors in the Wild, where the line between myth and reality blurs in the darkest corners of the earth. Here, we unravel the most terrifying cryptids, dive deep into chilling horror stories, and explore the mysteries that haunt the wilderness. From shape-shifting monsters to forgotten legends, we uncover the creatures and tales that lurk just beyond the reach of human understanding. So, keep your wits sharp, hit that subscribe button, and prepare for a journey into the unknown. The wild is waiting, but beware. It's not just the animals you should fear.
People only come to me when they've run out of options. That's the unspoken rule in my line of work. They knock on my door when the cops shrug, when priests stop answering calls, when whatever's in their walls or woods starts whispering at night. So when I opened my door at 2:06 a.m. to find Ezra Carr standing on my porch, I didn't ask questions. I just stepped aside and let him in. He looked like hell. Gaunt, unshaven, eyes sunken deep like two black marbles sunk into his skull. His coat was damp, stained with something that wasn't quite mud. The smell hit me before he did, sour and earthy, like turned soil and copper. The kind of scent you find under a house that hasn't been entered in decades. He didn't sit. He paced, then dropped a bundle of cash on my kitchen table, wrapped in what looked like dried leather, tied with string. That should have been the first red flag. "You're Ridley, right? You're the one who handled the thing up by Greenvale last winter," he said. I gave a half nod. That job still kept me up some nights. Ezra exhaled, long and shaky. "I need you to kill something." That wasn't unusual. People rarely came to me for anything else. "It's not human," he added. Now that was something. He slid a photo across the table, Polaroid, blurry, washed out, but the shape was unmistakable. Tall, lean figure in the middle of a cornfield, maybe 7, 8 feet high. It stood dead still in the moonlight, arms too long, legs jointed in the wrong places, like it had been stretched. There were no facial features, but something about the posture made my stomach turn. Ezra kept talking, but I barely heard him. I kept staring at that photo. "It started a few months back," he said. "Always shows up at the same time. 3:13 a.m., doesn't move, doesn't talk. Just stands out there right at the edge of the spiral." "Spiral?" I asked. "In the dirt, where the field turns black. It wasn't there before. Not until it came." I studied him. People like Ezra usually come in one of two flavors: terrified or raving. He was something in between. That dead calm you only see in people who've already accepted they're living in hell. He said the creature hadn't touched anyone. Not directly. But their animals were dying. Neighbors were moving out. His wife had stopped speaking altogether. He showed me a video. Her staring at the wall for hours, whispering something under her breath, carving circles into the table with her fingernail. I've called every church, every medium, every so-called expert. He looked up. They either laughed or hung up. I looked back at the photo. There was something familiar about the shape, not in memory, but in instinct. Like some deep part of me remembered that silhouette from before I was born. "How much are you offering?" I asked. He didn't blink, just pushed the bundle closer. More than I'd ever been paid. I should have said no. It took me nearly a day to get to the Carr farm. The directions Ezra gave me were scribbled on yellow paper, half faded and shaky. GPS got me close, until it didn't. Out there, Roads weren't roads, just broken trails through skeletal trees and fields that looked like they'd been abandoned decades ago. Around mile marker 23, my phone went dead. No signal, no satellite. Like the place rejected the outside world. It was dusk when I saw the farmhouse, a slouched silhouette at the end of a long dirt road, swallowed by cornfields on all sides. Not golden corn, not the kind that sways gently in the breeze. These stalks were sickly, bone-white and brittle, like they'd been sucked dry and left to fossilize under the sun. They didn't sway. They stood still. Too still. The farmhouse itself leaned with age, paint peeled from the walls in long strips. The windows were all closed, but behind the glass, something watched. I parked under the bare tree near the front porch. No animals, no wind, no sounds, not even birds. Ezra came out to greet me. Same hollow eyes, same silence. "You came," he said, like he didn't expect me to. "I always come," I muttered. "Doesn't mean I stay." He forced a half smile and led me inside. The place stank of dust and mildew. But underneath that, something else. Faint but present. Like burned hair or spoiled milk left out in the sun. I passed a row of family portraits in the hall. In the earlier ones, they all smiled. Kids, too. But by the last frame, just Ezra and his wife, both staring dead-eyed into the lens, the joy had rotted out of them. "She's upstairs," he said. "She doesn't talk to strangers." "I'm not here to make friends," I replied. We sat at the kitchen table. He poured something strong into 2 chipped mugs. I didn't drink it. "Every night," he said. "It appears in the field, always in the exact same spot, never closer, never farther, just watching. If we try to leave, it's gone before we hit the highway. And when we get back, it's like it never left. But the spiral, it keeps getting darker." I followed him out the back door and across the overgrown yard to the edge of the cornfield. The earth here was wrong, dry but soft, like a sponge that had bled out. And in the middle of the clearing was the spiral. I've seen witch signs before, ritual glyphs, even deep geometry carved by cults too far gone to name. But this spiral wasn't carved or burned. It was grown. The soil turned blackest at the center, and no plants dared to push through it. Even the stalks nearest the spiral leaned away, like they feared what was there. "That's where it comes," Ezra whispered. "Right there. Never anywhere else. Always 313. Then gone before morning." I set my pack down beside the porch, took inventory of my gear. Iron rounds, silver blade, salt, charms, the standard. But the air was heavy. My chest felt tight. I've walked into vampire dens, exorcised haunted crawl spaces, battled things that shouldn't exist under anything labeled natural law. This felt worse, like the land was trying to warn me. And the worst part? It wasn't afraid of me. I didn't go back inside. Didn't want to sit in that house surrounded by photographs of people who weren't smiling anymore. Instead, I sat up on the porch with my gear laid out beside me. Iron rounds loaded into the mag, silver blade unsheathed and glinting under the porch light. Salt line poured in a perfect half circle across the threshold. I've always believed in preparation. Ritual. Even if half of it's for show, the other half reminds you you're not helpless. Out here in places where the rules twist, that belief is all that keeps your head on straight. Ezra went back in around midnight, left a lamp on in the upstairs window, casting a dull yellow glow across the fields. He didn't say goodnight, just disappeared into the house, as if retreating from something he'd already surrendered to. I waited. The sky turned a deeper shade of black. No stars. The moon, too bright earlier, had now dulled to a sickly white smear behind thin clouds. The cornfields didn't move, not once. Not with wind, not with bugs. Nothing moved. Until my watch ticked to 3:13 a.m. And then, the wind stopped entirely. There hadn't been much before, just a breeze every so often, brushing across the tops of the corn. But now it was like the world had flatlined. No air, no sound, just pause. Then it appeared. Not walking in, not stepping from the corn like you'd expect in a movie. It just was. 1 second the field was empty. The next, it stood at the heart of the spiral, exactly where Ezra said it would be. I didn't blink, didn't breathe, just stared. It was taller than the stalks, maybe 7, maybe 8 feet. Limbs too long, joints in the wrong places. The kind of wrong you don't notice at first glance. You just feel it in your bones. Its arms hung down below its knees, fingers twitching with slow, jerking movements, like a broken marionette. Its skin, if it was skin, looked like twisted bark or burnt paper. Cracked and layered like it had been peeled and reapplied again and again. And its face. God. Its face. There were no eyes, no mouth. Just smooth, featureless flesh where a face should be. But somehow, it was still looking at me. It was like my thoughts slowed, like it was rooting around inside my head, not reading it, feeling it, touching pieces of me I didn't even know were there. I raised the rifle, took the shot. The bullet left the barrel with a satisfying crack and froze mid-air, stopped like it hit invisible glass. Then, slowly, almost gently, it dropped to the ground. The watcher didn't react, didn't flinch. It just tilted its head, curious, like it was watching a child fail to understand something simple. That's when I realized the truth. It didn't come to kill, it came to teach, and I wasn't going to like the lesson. The moment I crossed the spiral, the world cracked. Not literally. There was no flash of lightning or trembling earth, no dramatic shift. It was more like something behind reality shifted gears. A low click, felt more than heard, and suddenly the rules no longer applied. The air thickened. My ears popped like I was plunging underwater. The stars above me blinked out one by one as if a hand had smudged the sky. The moon faded into a bruised smear. My vision bent slightly at the edges, like I was seeing through warped glass. The watcher stood there, waiting. I gripped the silver blade and stepped fully into the spiral. The silence was absolute. No insects, no creaking porch boards. Even the pounding of my heart felt distant, like it had been turned down to a whisper. The space inside the spiral was wrong, bigger than it looked, like stepping inside a dream and realizing nothing fits quite right. I raised the blade. It didn't flinch. And then it opened its face, not like a mouth, more like a wound tearing open. The featureless flesh split soundlessly, peeling back to reveal a perfect, bottomless hole. No teeth, no tongue, no light, just a smooth, endless void. Then the sound began. Except it wasn't sound. Not in the normal sense. It spoke in memories. First, It screamed in my father's voice, the voice I hadn't heard since he died when I was 16. The words weren't clear, but the rage behind them was drunken, furious, violent, the kind of yelling that made you hide in closets when you were small. Then it changed. My mother's lullaby, soft and haunting. The same song she sang when I was sick with fever at age 5, when the walls of our trailer felt like they were pressing in. I hadn't heard that melody in over 20 years, but it slid perfectly into my ear, like it never left. Then came laughter. Her laugh. Amber. First love. Dead 2 years now. Suicide. It was the laugh she used when we'd hide under blankets from the rain, pretending the world didn't exist. That laugh was so pure it made my chest cave in. The Watcher was rifling through me, pulling pieces out of my soul and twisting them around like puzzle parts that didn't quite fit. I fell to my knees. The blade dropped from my hand, forgotten. My limbs felt like rubber. My breath came in ragged gasps, each one full of grief and confusion and overwhelming nostalgia that wasn't mine anymore. Not really. The hole in its face widened, and from that dark space came understanding, raw, unfiltered knowledge that should not be known. I saw a tree that screamed when lightning touched it. I saw a child born with no bones, crawling inside the walls of a cabin. I saw a creature made of crows, trapped beneath the roots of an upside-down church. I saw a sky with no stars and a sea made of eyes. I saw myself, old, hollow, skin stretched tight, standing in that same field, but smiling. Smiling like I finally understood. The Watcher raised a hand, long, bark-textured fingers ending in roots, and touched my forehead. And everything broke. Time shattered. I was floating in the scream of a memory I hadn't lived yet. I was the field. I was the spiral. I was the creature. And I wasn't. Then I blinked. The world returned, but it wasn't the same. The field around me was still. The Watcher was gone. And I was no longer standing. I was curled in the dirt, sobbing into my hands, whispering names I didn't recognize. When I came to, the sky was blue. The sun hovered low over the fields, casting long shadows across the brittle corn stalks. Birds chirped. Wind moved through the crops with a dry rustle. Normal things. Too normal. But I knew I hadn't just blacked out. I'd been somewhere else, and part of me hadn't come back. I stood up slowly. My joints ached like I'd aged a decade overnight. My hands were filthy, caked with black soil and dried blood. My gear was gone. Rifle, blade, salt, all of it. My pack lay empty on the porch. Ezra was waiting at the kitchen table when I stumbled inside. "You saw it, didn't you?" he asked without turning. I nodded. I didn't want to speak. My voice didn't feel like it would work right anymore. He slid a cup of water toward me. I stared at it for a long time before drinking. "What is it?" I finally asked, my throat raw. "What the hell is that thing?" Ezra didn't answer right away. He just stared at the table, his fingers twitching slightly against the wood. "We called it the thing in the spiral. My grandfather said it came once, long ago. Said it doesn't move through time like we do. Said it watches until someone answers back. And if you listen too long, it shows you things. Things you aren't supposed to know." He looked up, eyes bloodshot. "That's what happened to my wife." I didn't ask. I didn't need to. I remembered the photo of her carving spirals into the kitchen table. The whispers, the dead look in her eyes. She listened, he said, and then she stopped being her. I leaned back, rubbing my temples. My head felt like it was full of static and echoes. The memories it had shown me, they weren't fading. They were growing, like roots, wrapping around my real ones, choking them. "Why didn't you warn me?" I asked. Ezra gave a hollow laugh. "Would you have come if I had?" I didn't answer, because he was right. I stayed in the house that day, trying to sleep, trying to think. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw flashes of that other place, a version of the farm where the sky boiled red and the cornfields bled from the roots, where I walked among the spiral in silence, no longer human, no longer afraid. It felt like a memory from a life I hadn't lived yet. I heard scratching that night, behind the walls, inside them. Low murmurs followed me from room to room. The spiral didn't just live in the field anymore. It was in the house. I went into the cellar around midnight, just to check, just to prove to myself I wasn't losing it. That's where I found her, Ezra's wife. Except, she wasn't just her anymore. She was curled in the corner, humming softly to herself, rocking back and forth. Her skin was pale, her fingers stained black. The walls behind her were carved with spirals, hundreds of them, some big, some small. One of them pulsed, faintly, like it was breathing. When she looked up, her eyes were gone. Not gouged out, not injured. Just smooth skin, like they were never there to begin with. She smiled and whispered, "It's better there. You'll see." I didn't know what to say. The air in that cellar was thick, cloying with the smell of damp earth and something else. Something sharp and metallic like blood that had gone stale. The spirals on the walls glowed faintly, flickering like a candle flame trapped inside them. But the rest of the room remained dark, swallowing the edges of the light. Her smile twisted in the low glow. It wasn't kind. It wasn't welcoming. It was the smile of someone who had already stepped across a line and knew I would too soon enough. "You've seen it," she said again, her voice soft and syrupy. "You've seen what's waiting for you." I stepped back, bumping into the shelf behind me. My mind screamed at me to get out, to run. But I couldn't move. The spirals on the wall weren't just painted or carved. They were alive, moving ever so slightly, curling and uncoiling, stretching to meet each other, their edges pulsing with that sickly, unnatural light, as if they were growing. Her voice continued, a melody of madness. "Time doesn't work the way you think it does here. Not anymore. It's all circles. We all come back. We all answer the call." I wanted to ask her what the hell she meant, but my throat was tight. The words stuck there, caught in my chest. I turned to leave, but the door was gone. No handle, no hinges, just smooth wood where the opening had been. I reached for it, pressing my palm against the surface, but there was nothing. Nothing but that infinite, smooth texture. The walls were closing in around me. "You're already here," she said. Her voice was louder now, more insistent. "You've answered the call just like we did, just like he did." I turned back to her, panic rising in my throat. But she wasn't looking at me anymore. Her head was tilted back at an impossible angle, and she was staring at the ceiling. Her eyes, smooth and empty, blinked rapidly, as if searching for something that was never there. And then I heard it. That same low hum. It came from somewhere deep within the house, somewhere beneath the floors. It resonated in my bones, a deep, throbbing hum that made my teeth ache. It was the sound of something vast, something ancient. And it was getting closer. My heart hammered in my chest. I had to get out. Had to. I slammed my fist into the door, pushing as hard as I could, but it wouldn't budge. It didn't even creak. It was like I was pressing against solid stone. Her voice, once soft, became shrill. "There's no way out, Ridley. Not now. You heard it. You saw it. It knows you. You're part of it now. We're all part of it." The floor beneath me groaned, and then the spirals on the walls began to bleed. Thick, black liquid poured out of the cracks between the lines, dripping onto the floor in slow, deliberate drops. It moved like something alive, shifting and twisting as it pooled at my feet. The hum intensified, vibrating through the walls, the ceiling, the floor, like it was coming from every direction at once. I could feel the pressure building in my skull, pushing against the inside of my head, squeezing, and then the smell. It was copper, rotting meat, and something worse, something foul. It filled my nostrils until it was all I could taste, until it was choking me. I looked around frantically for an escape, but there was nothing. The spirals pulsed again. Something was coming, and it wasn't just in the house anymore. It was in my head. I turned back to her, to Ezra's wife. Her mouth was open wide now, too wide, stretching beyond what was humanly possible. Her teeth gleamed, jagged and broken, but they weren't her teeth anymore. They were something else, something sharper. She was grinning, or maybe it was a grimace. "Welcome," she whispered. "Welcome to the other place." I didn't even have time to scream. I don't know how long I was down there. Time bled into itself. It wasn't measured in hours anymore. It was measured in pulses, each beat of that sickening hum that rattled through the floorboards, through my teeth, through my mind. I wasn't sure if the world had turned inside out, or if I had slipped into a new kind of madness. But the moment I saw those walls start to shift, curling like flesh, the spirals pulling deeper into the wood, I knew the house wasn't a house anymore. It wasn't a place at all. It was a cage. The walls, the floor, the ceiling. They were closing in around me, bending, warping, as if the house was inhaling, preparing to swallow everything inside it. It wasn't natural. It wasn't real. But the worst part? I wasn't alone anymore. I could feel them, the others. They were here, in the house, in the walls, in the air. I could hear their whispers, soft at first, like a faint breeze, but they grew louder with each passing second. Their voices were cracked, disjointed, like they were speaking from the other side of a broken mirror. Every word they spoke twisted my insides into knots. And then I understood. The Watcher hadn't just been watching me. It had been waiting. Waiting for me to make the same choice it had already made. To step across that line and join the other place. To stop fighting it, stop running from it, and accept that this was where I belonged now. But I hadn't answered the call yet. Not fully. The moment I realized that, the air changed again. The room went cold. The spirals on the walls stopped pulsing, and in the sudden silence, a figure appeared in front of me. It was Ezra. Or it looked like him. His face was pale, his eyes wide and hollow, and he had the same dead expression I'd seen in the photographs. But there was something wrong with him, something twisted. His limbs were too long, his movements too stiff, like he was being controlled by strings pulled by an unseen hand. "You're not supposed to be here," he said, his voice a low rasp. "You don't understand." I swallowed hard, my throat dry and tight. "I understand plenty," I muttered. "What is this place? What the hell is it?" He stepped closer, his feet dragging across the floor. His hands were shaking as if he were fighting something inside himself, something desperate, something that wanted to break free. "It's not just a place," he whispered, his voice cracking. "It's a part of it." He gestured vaguely toward the spirals that still bled across the walls. "The spiral, the thing in the field, the watcher, it's a doorway." I blinked, trying to process the words, but the hum in the walls made it difficult to think. "A doorway to what?" I managed to ask. Ezra's eyes glazed over, and his voice dropped to a whisper. "To the place where it all begins. The place where the spiral comes from." I felt a chill creep down my spine. "You're saying this thing is from another world?" He nodded slowly. "Another reality, another dimension. It's beyond the rules of time. A place that isn't alive but isn't dead either. It doesn't move through time. It doesn't move through space. It just is." I felt a wave of nausea rise in my stomach, but I forced myself to stay still. "The Watcher is part of that place, and it waits. It watches until someone hears the call, and when they do..." He trailed off, his voice breaking. "When they do, they become part of the cycle, part of the spiral. It's never really over. You'll come back. You'll see." The ground beneath my feet shifted, like the house was groaning, bending under the weight of something heavy. A loud crack echoed through the walls, making my head ring. Ezra's body twitched violently, his arms jerking like broken marionette strings. Then, without warning, he dropped to his knees, his body folding in half as if it had lost all shape. "I didn't ask for this," he whispered, his face twisting in agony. "None of us did." I stumbled back, my breath catching in my throat. The room seemed to shudder around me, as though the house itself were reacting to Ezra's pain. "Then why didn't you leave?" I demanded. "Why didn't you get out before it was too late?" His eyes locked onto mine, wide and hollow. A tear, dark, like oil, trickled down his cheek. "Because you can't leave," he rasped. "Not after you've answered. Once you hear it, you're part of it. And there's no escape." I staggered backward, trying to wrap my mind around the impossible truth of his words. But the ground continued to tremble beneath me. The walls twisted and stretched, and that low, maddening hum grew louder. I had been so sure I could fix this, kill it, end it. But now I understood. The monster I had been hired to kill wasn't just a thing. It was a force, a presence that bent the very fabric of reality. And I was already in it. I could feel it now. It wasn't just in the walls anymore, not just in the house. It was inside me. The hum pulsed through my veins, and I swear I could hear the spirals twisting in my mind. The memories, the flashes, the visions, they weren't just fading in and out. They were bleeding into me. Every thought I had was tangled with them. The thing in the field, the house, the spirals, they were all becoming me. I was becoming them. I felt my hands shaking as I wiped my face, trying to clear the overwhelming weight that seemed to press down on my skull. The air in the room thickened, and the walls seemed to breathe in time with my pulse. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. The sound wouldn't come. And then, there it was again. A flicker. A shift. The air around me thickened like smoke, and the spirals on the walls twisted violently. It was coming back. I turned, expecting to see Ezra, but he was gone. Only the spirals remained, twisting and writhing like living things. The floor under my feet groaned and cracked, splintering into new shapes, shapes that made no sense. The corners of the room bent into angles that should have been impossible. And the sound. It was louder now. The hum. But it wasn't just in my head. It was coming from the very heart of the house, the very heart of the spiral. I took a step forward, my feet unsteady beneath me. I couldn't stop moving, couldn't stop following that sound. I had to know. I had to understand. The kitchen was just ahead, but it wasn't the same. The walls were now completely covered in spirals, pulsating with dark energy. The countertops were slick with the same black substance that had leaked from the walls earlier, and the air smelled of decay. Then, I saw it. In the middle of the kitchen, beneath the flickering light of a broken lamp, there was a hole, a dark, gaping hole in the floor, surrounded by a ring of cracked tiles. It was alive. I could feel it. The air around it shimmered, bending as if the fabric of reality itself was being torn open. The hum was coming from that hole, that thing. I had to go closer. I didn't know why. The hole called to me not with sound, but with feeling, like the pull of gravity, deep and insistent. Each step I took made the hole feel larger, closer. I could feel it pulling me in. That's when I heard it. Don't. I froze. It was Ezra's voice. I turned, expecting to see him behind me, but there was no one. The room was empty, no shadows, no shapes, just the pulsing spirals and that damn hole. But the voice came again. This time, clearer. Don't. It will take you. I turned back to the hole. It was staring at me now. It saw me. I stepped back, but my feet wouldn't obey me. The pull was too strong, the hum too loud. I reached out, desperate to stop myself, but something in me was already beyond stopping. The hole shifted, and in that instant, I saw it. The other place. It was not a landscape, not a room. It was just nothing. A vast, empty expanse of swirling spirals, twisting in on themselves, stretching out into infinity. And in that nothing, I saw faces, people, faces I knew. The thing I'd been chasing, the monster I'd been hired to kill. It wasn't just a creature. It was a presence. A force that existed between dimensions, between realities. And it was feeding off the ones who answered its call. Feeding off those who became part of its cycle. Ezra had warned me. He had tried to tell me. This wasn't a hunt. It wasn't about killing a monster. It was about breaking the cycle, but I was already in it. There was no way out. I could feel the spiral pulling me, tightening around me like a vice. And then, a voice. A low whisper, soft and cold, but impossible to ignore. You've answered. I tried to move, tried to fight it, but my body was no longer mine. It felt like my bones were being bent by invisible hands, twisting, reshaping. I fell to my knees, gasping for air. My vision blurred, and as I fell, the spirals on the walls reached for me, stretching outward as if they were alive, eager to claim me. Please. I could barely breathe. The hum was deafening now. It was inside me, rattling through my skull, burrowing deep into my mind. I had to fight it. I had to fight back. But it was too late. I had already answered. I woke up in the field. The corn stretched high on either side of me, the sun low and golden in the sky. Birds sang. The world was so normal. But I knew. Deep down, I knew it wasn't. Not anymore. I staggered to my feet, wiping the dirt from my face. My hands trembled, but I didn't feel real. The air was still thick with the hum, faint, like a distant echo I couldn't quite place. The spirals were gone from the walls of the house, but their presence still clung to me, to the very marrow in my bones. I wanted to scream, but the sound felt trapped inside me. I couldn't move. My mind was spinning, the memories of the other place swirling around me in an endless whirlpool of confusion and dread. Had I really been there? Had I been pulled into that other world? Or was it all just a nightmare? It didn't matter. Because I felt it. The truth. I had crossed a line, and now I would never leave. There was no escaping the spiral, no escaping the pull of the Watcher. I turned, expecting to see Ezra, but there was no sign of him. No house, just the fields, the corn, the sound of wind whispering across the land. I felt eyes on me. I wasn't alone. I turned again, and there they were. The faces, the people who had answered before me. Ezra's wife, her skin smooth and empty where her eyes should have been. She stood in the field, just on the edge of the shadows, her mouth opening wide in that awful, toothless grin. And behind her, there were others. More faces, more bodies, all staring at me, all waiting. They were no longer human. They had crossed over. They had become part of the Watcher, part of the spiral. And now, they were waiting for me to join them. It's your turn now. The voice, soft and cold, echoed in my mind. I tried to move, tried to run, but my legs wouldn't obey. I was rooted to the ground, my feet sinking into the soil as if the earth itself was pulling me down. The spirals, those dark, twisting shapes, were in the soil now, in the very earth beneath me, swirling, stretching, pulling. The world began to blur, the edges of reality bending and twisting as the spiral closed in around me. The field, the sun, the people, they all faded into a swirling, dizzying vortex of shapes and shadows. I could feel it now. The Watcher. It wasn't a creature. It wasn't a thing. It was a presence, a force, an idea that existed everywhere. It was the pull of time itself, the endless cycle of life and death, and it was calling to me. It had always been calling to me. I had answered, and now I was part of it. I looked up at the sky, the swirling clouds, the blood-red horizon, and I knew the truth. The spiral never ends. It can't. It doesn't. It's eternal, stretching out into infinity, pulling those who answer back again and again. I wasn't meant to kill the monster. I was meant to become part of it. The wind howled, and the corn began to move. The faces behind me were no longer still. They were moving, closing in, growing closer, their grins widening, their bodies warping into shapes that weren't human anymore. And as they reached for me, their hands outstretched and cold, I felt the pull, deeper than gravity, deeper than fear, and I knew. I was already gone. There was no escape. The spiral had claimed me, and the Watcher was waiting.
As this story ends, remember, out here in the wild, the terrors never truly vanish. They're always watching, waiting. If you dare to face them again, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. You never know when the next nightmare will find you. Until then, stay safe or stay scared.